Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Little Frenchie in Big Texas. I am Anne. So I woke up today with pictures of the streets of Paris and tear gases on the news. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to give you some updates on what's going on abroad. And when I say abroad, as you know, I get most of my information from the French news and my family back home. So it's really what's going on in the old continent here. And let's start with the Freedom Convoy, because it all started in Canada. But initially, there was no news in France about that movement. Nothing in the news, whether it was newspapers or TV. Mainstream media were totally silent. And that lasted for a good 10 days. Not a word. And what's really interesting here as well about the news, and you have to put it into perspective, is the link between France and Canada. Quebec, as you know, speaks French, used to be French province, long time ago in history, but still, and you have a lot of French people living in Canada. So it has very strong ties. And despite this, there was no news whatsoever about what was going on there. Then it started appearing really at the bottom line of the newspaper and pretty much just conveying the voice of Trudeau here. So pretty biased. And I kind of understand why now. They just wanted to silence this to avoid having the same kind of movements happening in France. And it's happening anyway. So it started actually not just France, it's all over Europe, where you have started also with truckers. The situation is a bit different in France than Canada. In Canada, the truckers own their trucks. In France, they don't. So they decided to march this week, actually yesterday, Friday, onto Paris. And after Paris, going to Brussels, which is the head of the European Union. All over Europe, not just France. It's a much smaller movement in France, and given the truckers don't own their truck, they decided to go from all the different cities around France to Paris with their cars. So it can be an RV, a car, whatever they have, and drive there. What's interesting here is that they did not get permission to enter Paris and protest in Paris. I know it sounds weird because you see protests in Paris all the time with the yellow jackets everywhere, but they did not get authorized this time. Which means that what happened is that the police were waiting for them at all the main entry points of Paris, and not just like the police car. They had like heavy military vehicle waiting for them, and they made quite a few arrests. But despite this, some managed to get in. I mean, given they're not driving trucks, it's pretty easy. You lie if you're being asked, what do you want to do? Why are you going inside the city? Oh, I'm going to visit so and so. So quite a few got in, and they went into the Champs-Élysées, the main avenue to protest, pretty much the big image with the Arc de Triomphe. And that's the image we've seen on TV this morning with the tear gases to get all these protesters away from the main avenue. What's really interesting here, besides what's happening in Europe, so the same here, I'm mentioning France, but you got the same I read on the Netherlands, other countries, and then they're going to Brussels next week. But beside this, what's interesting as well, and the censorship of the initial information coming out of Canada, is also the media. And here I'm talking Facebook. The French had a Facebook page to kind of rally people all together on that page, which the administrator got banned. And that kind of reminded me of a video that I just saw yesterday out of Canada. Very interesting video. I will put the link in the description below. So it's a very short one. I think it's 1 minute and 40 seconds, well worth watching. That video is a woman in Ontario opening her door to a police officer. Very nice young lady police officer, very polite, handing her a little pamphlet on how to protest peacefully. So the woman asked, why do you give me that piece of information? And the lady answered that she's part of a Facebook group the Freedom Convoy, and as such, she's been flagged. Interesting, no? And the lady makes a police officer talk, and they are monitoring people on Facebook, part of the groups, and what they do. You know, it's like this Orson Welles book, 1984. Big Brother is watching you. If you haven't read it, please, I will put the link as well in the description below. Very interesting book, because that's exactly what's happening here. So that really is the main headline as of today. Canada managed to really get it out to the world despite the censorship of their mainstream media in Canada. It's all over the internet. It goes into the other medias abroad. So it's a big movement that started with the vaccine for the truckers and goes way beyond this at this point, which is a big difference from the French as well, because the French, it's every time there's a protest, it gets enlarged to a lot of different movements. So it started as well with the vaccine and so on, but now they're also protesting the purchasing power and the inflation, the price of energy. So it's a bit all mixed up together, saying we're not happy. So it's a different approach as well. The French like to protest every time they're not happy, so they're just summing it all up and in the street, which is a different, it's way different than Canada, which is a lot more profound here. So, first headline. Second headline is on the COVID-19 and some countries in Europe easing restrictions. The first one here being the UK, was Boris Johnson pretty much opened it up, probably because he was caught last year partying without anything on, without mask and so on, and said, well, okay, now that I'm being caught, I'm doing it, let everybody do it. I don't know, but they've opened it up, and apparently it's working quite well. And that also made a headline abroad in the other European countries. Some are easing up their restrictions, mostly in the northern part of Europe, but others are not. And among the others, you've got Austria, which is probably one of the toughest here in terms of restrictions, where if you don't have the vaccine, you cannot do anything, pretty much. You have to stay home. And France as well, with the vaccine pass, where, well, if you don't have the vaccine, you can go to work and you can go grocery shopping, but that's pretty much it. No social life. So France is not easing it up much, just removing the mask if you go into open spaces and so on, but that's it. So very different approaches depending on the European countries here, and very slow for some of them to open up. The next big news is, of course, Ukraine. Of course. It's making headlines, and what's making headlines actually is pretty interesting is Joe Biden making headlines here on that one. And it started, it started a while back, and it's really getting pushed onto the French news also because the French President Macron happens to be the president, I don't know if he's president, but the head of the European Union. It's a rotating 6 months seat, and right now it's occupied for the first half of the year by the French. So Macron is the official head here, and I think he also has the head of the NATO army forces. I don't know if these two jobs go together, but he's got the big job right now. So taking into account his big role, and the fact that he's running for re-election in 2 months, non-officially yet, but he is. He went to Russia and to Ukraine last weekend, I think traveled Sunday, Monday, to meet with both. So how did it go, you're gonna ask, huh? Well, I'll let you look at that picture. I think it speaks 1,000 words. Look at that table. They are 4 meters apart to talk. Does it look like friendly talks to you? And look at the whole surrounding. It's all icy white. Woo, that looks very chilly conversation, I would say. Definitely not on a friendly note. So that was the discussion with Russia. And not much to report on that side. Not much to report. But the overall opinion, when you read the subtitles or talk to people in France, is that the one that wants war is not in Russia, it's here. And that's why Biden is making headlines. So it's an interesting view as well on that one. And besides Ukraine, what drives the discussion as well is what it implies. And there's a big impact on energy here in Europe. some countries are very dependent on the gas that's going through Ukraine and Russia, Germany being probably the best example here. On the French side, it's not so much, given we have about 70% of the energy that's produced from nuclear energy. But there's a but. We still have quite a few reactors that are down for maintenance, rust, old age. So there's a lot of talk here about how to strengthen our energy independence in Europe. And for the French, what Macron would like to do is to build more nuclear plants and some more renewable as well. So here we're talking about the windmill in the sea, on the North Sea mostly, where you got quite high winds, but a lot more nuclear. And he also wants to prolong the life of these reactors that are already failing. So I'm not too sure how that's going to work. But he's pushing at full for nuclear energy on the French side. Not too sure what Germany is doing, and probably more on the renewable side, knowing Germany. But that's really the talks here, what you can read in the newspaper, aside from the elections, because that's really what 80%, maybe 90% of the news on the French side is about, the upcoming elections, where you have an unofficial candidate, the president, Macron, and then 10 other candidates, 2 of them just behind him being 2 women, both on the right side, which is more on the Republican side here in the US. One is extreme right, who really wants to clean France and give France back to the French. And I think she's also anti-European Union. It's a lot on that side. And the other one is more like the usual Republican kind of mindset for the business owners and so on. And then you have a lot of others, independent, ecological, I mean, a bit of everything. But to run, you need to get 500 signatures from mayors. So mayors of cities, and we have a lot of small cities. And most of the candidates still don't have their 500 signatures. So, except for Macron, who has like 1,000, but he's still not officially candidates. So we'll see, but that's pretty much what's the number one in the French news. It's all about France and very little about things abroad. It's just starting to open up a tiny bit with Ukraine and with the Freedom Convoy, opening up a bit of what's going on in Canada. But that is it. So I hope you found this useful and interesting. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Thank you all for watching.
And checking back in with those protests in Paris, they are marching against COVID vaccine rules there. The scene heating up as police banning them from blocking off any part of the city like we've been seeing in Canada. You can see people running around there in the streets of Paris, France. As after President Joe Biden yesterday spoke with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about this situation and decided this could not continue. It is affecting American plants. It is affecting car plants on the Canadian side of this. So the 2 world leaders said that they will not stand for blocking commerce. So the police are acting on the Windsor Bridge, on the Ambassador Bridge, in Windsor, across from Detroit, to make sure the flow of goods can travel back and forth. We will keep an eye on both of these stories.